What if Kanye West was trained as a Jedi? In the real world, Kanye is well known to be a controversial pioneer in music and business, and he certainly knows how to make headlines. However, one of our viewers wondered, what if instead Kanye existed in the Star Wars galaxy and had been trained as a Jedi? That's what we'll be diving into in this video. This is going to be a doozy, folks. So put on graduation, grab a steaming cup of caf, and let's get right into what would happen if Kanye West was a Jedi. Our story begins on the world of Nalhada, one that's far outside of Republic jurisdiction, where Kanye West is born to an enslaved single mother named Donda in service of Gardula the Hutt. She starts raising him, and immediately she can tell that he has abilities beyond that of a normal boy. Sometimes he's able to lift things with his mind, bringing many of his toys near to him as he plays with them without touching them. For her entire life, Donda had heard stories of the legendary Jedi, and she wondered if they would ever come to bring her boy a better life, since he clearly had excellent potential in the Force. As it would turn out, the Force seemed to be smiling upon her and her son. One day, as they're being transported together in one of the Hutt slave ships to an auction on Zygeria, a contingent of Jedi Knights ends up apprehending the slave ship on a mission for the Republic, which had decided to try cracking down on some crime in the Outer Rim. They free the slaves, including Donda and Kanye. The Jedi end up taking the slaves back to Coruscant, and they can sense the Force potential in young Kanye. So they ask his mother if she'd be willing to let him go with them to learn the ways of the Jedi. Knowing that they'd be able to provide him with a better life than she could, Donda agrees, and she allows them to take Kanye away from her. How does this impact the rest of our story? Let's keep going and find out. In Kanye's formative years, he trains with Master Yoda and the Bear Clan in the ways of the Force. Yoda is impressed by the young boy's mastery of the Force, especially at a young age. Yoda tells Kanye that he's incredibly talented, and that he thinks he'll do great things for the galaxy. Kanye takes this to heart. As he gets older, he begins to explore his unique connection with the Force. Much like Master Avar Kriss in the High Republic era, Kanye could hear the Force as a song. While most people felt its presence, Kanye could physically hear it, which changed depending on the energy surrounding him. At the Jedi Temple, Kanye could always hear the calming, meditative music of the environment. When he sensed Master Yoda, he could hear a cheerful tune play. Each of his peers in the Bear Clan had a very different note that Kanye could sense, and many of them were curious about what their notes sounded like. Kanye, understanding that his ability was different than the one that most others had, decided to explore it more, diving deep into the realm of music. While Kanye focused on all of his Jedi training, he felt that he was at harmony in the Force most when he created music. Influenced by what he heard from the Song of the Force, Kanye is able to create unique melodies that astound his peers. Even the Jedi Masters, who are normally very stoic, feel moved by Kanye's music. Mace Windu is driven to the point of shedding a tear, something that he hadn't experienced since he was a youngling. None of the Jedi know how to treat Kanye, and his abilities are incredibly unique. They can sense that he's special, and that his music is born from the Force. Yoda says that he'll continue to watch him throughout his journey in the Bear Clan, and, from there, he'll find a suitable master for the young artist. Kanye often places lyrics to his song as a child, too. He sings about his time in the Order, the benevolence of the Jedi, and how he misses his mother. It's an outlet for him, and the young boy can escape momentarily from his formal training. During study sessions between his fellow younglings, they'd often ask him to perform for them, and they love his songs. Kanye realizes that he has a knack for performing, and he continues to develop his skill. He also noticed that through his music, he's able to alter the moods of those around him with the Force, more than most musicians out there. It was almost as though he could put those watching him in a trance, and he had sway over their minds. It was like a prolonged mind trick. Kanye could control the songs that he heard emanating from them in the Force through his own Force-imbued music. When it came time for Kanye to become a Padawan, he had an unconventional path waiting for him. He was assigned to Master Qui-Gon Jinn, one who is used to dealing with unconventional aspects of the Force. Qui-Gon gladly takes him on, and he tells Kanye that he's a massive fan of what he's seen in the young Jedi. Kanye is happy that he's working with Jinn, as he'd heard many stories about his unorthodox Jedi style. Kanye felt that he could empathize with the older master, especially since he'd never been considered to be a normal Jedi. Qui-Gon tells the young Kanye that not only will he be training him in the ways of the Jedi, but that the Council has organized for him to receive formal training in music theory, composition, and stage presence. Kanye is elated, pleased that the Council actually believed in him and that they supported him. As time goes on, Kanye goes on many missions across the galaxy with Qui-Gon. He sees new cultures, species, and people that inspire his art, which he continues to work on through his music training in the temple. Kanye continues to sing about his mother, an individual who had a massive impact on him, despite not having that many memories of her. While this concerns the Council, they see that singing is a healthy outlet for the young Kanye, so they allow him to continue singing about her. He puts on many shows at the temple, captivating audiences everywhere with his talents. Word about Kanye spreads, and with his increased fame comes more of an ego. Qui-Gon reminds Kanye to remain humble and to use his gifts for the betterment of the galaxy. However, even though Kanye tries to battle his pride, it's something that continues to worm its way into his mind. Eventually, Kanye graduates from his apprentice training, and he starts his journey as a knight. It's at this point that he's able to release his first album, which he titles Graduation. In this album, he discusses his trials as a Jedi Padawan, and he explained how he wrestles with his pride, emotions, and frustration from the fact that he may never see his mother again. The galaxy absolutely loves this, and the Council permits him to go on a galactic tour for him to spread his message and give some positive press to the Order. He is incredibly successful, and Qui-Gon keeps in touch with him throughout his travels, telling Kanye that he's proud of him for bringing joy to the rest of the galaxy. Qui-Gon also tells Kanye that he's training a new apprentice, Obi-Wan Kenobi, and that his experience with training Kanye had helped him learn to understand many of Obi-Wan's struggles. When Kanye returns to Coruscant, he meets Obi-Wan, and he becomes an older brother figure to the young Jedi. Kanye is incredibly impacted by the death of Qui-Gon on Naboo. In his grief, he writes a lot of music, and he can hear his own melancholic song in the Force when he meditates. The music that Kanye comes up with is a direct expression of his grief, and it starts to take some turns that the Council doesn't fully approve of. He sings about his darker emotions, such as sadness, anger, and his lack of understanding towards the will of the Force. The Council warns Kanye that he should return to his old style of art, but Kanye refuses. Instead, he releases another album about the impact that the death of Qui-Gon had had on him. Palpatine sees this, and he becomes a confidant for the Jedi Knight. Kanye believes that Palpatine has his best interests at heart, and, like Anakin, Palpatine sees the potential to turn Kanye to his side. In addition, Kanye and Anakin begin to develop a unique bond with each other. They're both former slaves who were taken from the Jedi at a young age. Both of them still missing their mothers. Kanye serves as an uncle figure to Anakin, who is now training under Obi-Wan. At around this time, because of Kanye's grief regarding Qui-Gon, he goes to seek out some hope in finding his mother. He searches Coruscant, and he eventually finds records of her on the registry. Next to her name, though, it says that she is sadly deceased. Kanye had finally mustered the courage to go searching for the woman that he had missed for so many years, and she had passed away without so much as a chance for him to say goodbye. Paired with his grief about Qui-Gon, Kanye starts to become more and more reclusive and emotionally unstable. In response to this, the Jedi chastise him rather than care for him, and he becomes more disenfranchised with the Jedi Order. The support that they had shown for him when he was younger and been spewing out propaganda in music for them was now gone. It seemed that now that Kanye was going through a tough time and didn't have as much use to the Jedi Order, that they were not actually there for him. As time rolls on, and as the Clone Wars begin to consume the galaxy, Kanye starts to become more political. He's open about his views on the HoloNews when he does interviews, telling people that he thinks that Palpatine is a really great guy who knows what's best for the galaxy. He rails against the separatist ideology, claiming that anyone who subscribes to it is foolish. Many people love him for his rants, but others begin to question his sanity. It seemed that the death of his former master had truly impacted him, and he hadn't ever fully recovered. Many of his new songs were inherently political in nature, and they specifically targeted his frustrations with the separatists. Because he's such a useful tool for Republic propaganda, he isn't placed into battle. Many folks begin to question his sanity as he begins to take stranger and stranger stances on issues, and his interviews start to descend into the realm of ridiculous. At one point, he even mentions that he believes he'd make a better Supreme Chancellor than Palpatine, and that the man had inspired his interest in politics. At this, both the Council and Palpatine start to become worried. Seeing the massive sway that Kanye had on much of the population, Palpatine knows that if he decides to ever run for political office, many will support him, which would throw a massive wrench in his plans. The Jedi know that if Kanye ever was to get more directly involved with politics, it would reflect poorly on their order, and the power that they had accumulated in the Senate over the years. Anakin is the only one who encourages Kanye's behavior, saying that many of the boys in the field find him to be quite inspiring, and that they believe he'd make better military decisions than the current Republic leadership. This begins to get to Kanye's head, and soon, he starts to spew his own political takes. Once again, there are lots across the galaxy who are inspired by this rogue Jedi. Finally, after putting up with Kanye's nonsense for long enough, the council decides to expel the performer. He's totally fine with this, especially since he has started to see the error in the ways of the Jedi when it came to managing relationships. He still lives on Coruscant, and he still performs. He's also continued to be considered widely popular within the clone army, and many Jedi secretly harbor sympathies for his plight. That's what kicks off Kanye's brief galactic political career. Seeing his popularity within the population, Kanye calls for everyone who agrees with him and thinks that he'd make a better chancellor than Palpatine to gather in front of the Senate building for a massive protest on Life Day. This riles up many people who are growing sick of the prolonged war, one that Kanye promises to bring an end to swiftly, and many show up for his protest. Even some disgruntled clones come, despite regulations against them engaging in performative political demonstrations. There are a few of Kanye's old Jedi friends there too, and even Anakin comes along to see what's going on. However, Anakin doesn't join the protests. Instead, he tries to convince Kanye that he's gone too far, and that the Chancellor is a good man with a good vision for the galaxy. Kanye dismisses Anakin's concerns, and he gives him a speech that electrifies his base. Anakin stays at the fringe of the protests, along with Padme, who had shown up also to try and convince the rogue Jedi to stop his shenanigans as well. In one last effort to get his base riled up, Kanye begins to perform on stage. His songs are passionate, and he uses the Force to manipulate the emotions of all those present. Anakin, being a strong Jedi, is able to resist Kanye's influence. He also manages to protect Padme from it, reaching out in the Force to stop Kanye's enchantments from reaching her. Anakin watches in horror as the crowd sways to Kanye's music, and something terrible happens. Consumed by his pride, Kanye commands his followers march towards the Senate building, and tells them that it was time for them to retake the galactic government for the people. They cry out in anger, heeding Kanye's call. Many of them put out small arms, and the clones in attendance pull out their issued blasters. Even the Jedi that were there weren't strong enough to resist Kanye's seduction, and they pull out their lightsabers, marching with the rest of the crowd. Anakin pulls out his lightsaber and hops on stage, ready to stop Kanye from pursuing further. Kanye, who wasn't accustomed to dueling, but had still kept his blade following his departure from the Order, pulls his out to match Anakin, and things continue to spiral from here. Kanye had started an insurrection. As people start to pour into the Senate building, things start to turn violent. What begins as some minor pushing and shoving between the Senate guards and the protesters escalates when one of the protesters fires off a blaster, causing complete chaos to ensue. The Senate guards try to apprehend the protesters peacefully, but it doesn't work. They're forced to call in the Coruscant riot police as things continue to get worse, and the Senate is placed on lockdown. Immediately, senators are rushed into their offices as to spread them out if the violent insurrectionists ever made their way into the Senate chambers. Palpatine is put on lockdown under protection of Mace Windu and Yoda, both of whom were now regretting their decision to kick Kanye from the Order. They were really hoping that he would snap up and get into better shape after they expelled him from the Order, or at the very least, live a better life. They didn't ever think that he would start a revolution against the Chancellor and try to overthrow a democratically elected leader. Now, here they were, dealing with this wave of his crazed fans, and even some of their own Jedi Knights. Anakin duels Kanye outside the Senate chambers, a spectacle for many. Padme stares off to the side, electing not to involve herself with this battle, watching her secret husband as he dances with the delirious former Jedi in combat. Kanye feels Anakin's Force song, sensing that it's a chaotic mesh of dark notes, and he tells Anakin that he could join him. He tries to put some of his persuasive Force influence into his words, but Anakin remains strong. He charges at Kanye, screaming at the top of his lungs, forcing Kanye to defend with his purple blade. Kanye's defense is sluggish, and Anakin quickly wears him down. Once again, Kanye turns on the charm, trying to convince Anakin to join him with his words. He appeals to everything they've had in common, including how they've both lost their mothers, and now they had also both been slaves at one point. This pushes Anakin over the edge, saying that clearly, if Kanye could do this, then they never were anything alike. Anakin disarms Kanye, and he slices off the rogue Jedi's hands before pocketing the purple saber and putting his own blade to Kanye's throat, proclaiming him to be under arrest. Cheers erupt from the citizens nearby who had been watching, and Anakin is heralded as a hero. Eventually, once Tarkin and Fox arrive with a group of Coruscant police and shock troopers, Kanye's crowd is also dispersed. Tear gas is thrown into the group of insurrectionists, and many of the civilians flee. Some of the disgruntled clones fire a few shots off, but they're quickly tackled by shock troopers. Many of these protesters are imprisoned, and others flee the scene, quick to get away from their failed rebellion. Kanye's attack had been brief, but it had been abrupt, unexpected, and violent. Kanye is immediately arrested by Tarkin's people, and he's put on trial for his crimes against the Republic. His lawyers argue that he had been in a state of mania, and that he wasn't in his right mind, which gets Kanye off on an easier charge. He's still cited with treason against the Republic, but he's only put on house arrest, and he's given a therapist who will come and try to figure out where this artist's issues stem from. While the Jedi know that they are partially to blame for Kanye's mental spiral, they refuse to acknowledge it. Anakin, knowing that the Order tended to repress feelings of their members, brings this up. Obi-Wan also expresses concern, saying that perhaps they could have handled the Kanye situation differently. In their arrogance, though, the Council disagrees. They say that Kanye had given into darkness on his own, and that some simply weren't destined for the Jedi path. At this, Anakin storms out of the council chambers, and he visits Kanye, telling him that he apologized on behalf of the council, and that he understood that Kanye was sick in the mind. Kanye appreciates that Anakin understands, and he's dedicated to improving himself as time goes on. Therapy is going well for Kanye, and his music is coming along well. In fact, Kanye even has an album that he's working on about his mother, entitled Donda, which Anakin says he can't wait to hear when it comes out. Seeing an opportunity to manipulate the war in his favor, Palpatine proclaims that the galaxy will be cracking down on all those with separatist sympathies within the galactic government. He states that clearly, people like Kanye were a threat to the Republic, and he believes that the courts had let him off lightly. So Palpatine orchestrates an initiative within the Intelligence Bureau to unearth senators who secretly harbored allegiances to the Confederacy, something that is met with massive applause in the Senate. Padme, Bail, and Mon Mothma are incredibly wary of this, but they go along with it, hoping that this initiative would only be temporary. Palpatine also continues to play into Anakin's frustration with the Council and how they had treated Kanye. He says that clearly they were wrong in certain areas, and that the Jedi were not all-knowing. Anakin tells the Chancellor that now he was beginning to see that he was right. Anakin goes to the Outer Rim sieges with Obi-Wan and the 501st, even more frustrated with the Jedi Council than he had been in the original timeline. How do these events influence the end of our story? Let's keep going and find out. In the end, Palpatine's plan still succeeds. Anakin turns back to the dark side, Padme dies, Order 66 is executed, and the Jedi Order falls. Palpatine's galactic empire rises in place of the Republic, and a shadow begins to shroud the once vibrant galactic city capital of Coruscant. The clones are phased out, and things start to spiral downhill. However, in this timeline, one of the Jedi who escapes Order 66 is Kanye. Kelleran Beck, who had been a student in the Jedi Order that had witnessed Kanye's demise, goes to pick up the aging man in his apartment, telling him about what was going on. Kanye, fearing for his life, goes with Kelleran, and they settle down together in an out-of-the-way scug hole in the Outer Rim. Together, they train Grogu, and they live a satisfactory life as hermits together. Kanye, though, is growing old. He eventually passes away, falling into the Force, finally having found peace in his return to sanity through the training of Grogu. While he was saddened to hear about the demise of the Order, he knew that at least there was some hope for the galaxy to hold on to. As Kanye passes into the next life, he can sense the presence of his mother welcoming him, singing him that lullaby that he had always heard as a child. Kanye becomes one with the song of the Force, finally finding peace in life. Hey there everyone, I hope that you enjoyed today's what if scenario. If you did, I think that you'd also like our other story, what if Mr. Beast took on Jabba the Hutt? If you have any thoughts on what happened in this story, please leave them in the comments below. Would you like to see a part 2? What do you think would happen next? Have an incredible rest of your day, fellow Star Wars fans, and as always, I hope that you've had your daily delicious dose of Bantha Stew.